Hey there, welcome to Paint Night. Tonight, we're going to the beach. Hi, I'm Myron. I'll be your host and instructor for the evening. If this is your first time doing a paint night with me, welcome. If you've done one in the past, welcome back. I think you will all have a good time tonight. And by the end of the evening, you will have created a piece of artwork that you will be proud to hang in your home. Now, if it's a paint night, you might be asking, why am I standing in my kitchen? Well, tonight is going to be a paint and sip. So I'm going to invite you to get your favorite beverage. And go ahead and sip on that beverage while you're painting your paintings tonight. In the meantime, I'm going to share with you my secret recipe for citrus punch. All you need is some orange sherbet, lemon lime soda, a glass to put it in, and a straw. So let me show you how to do it. It's super easy and it's super tasty. Open up the soda, pour a little bit in, open up your sherbet. See the orange sherbet? Now, you can kind of put as much as you want in. You only need like 2 scoops. But you can put 3 or 4 in. And then you add a little bit more to top it off. You wait for the bubbles to go down, then you add a little bit more. Take your straw. This happens to be a straw that I saved from Wendy's. And put it in. And you are ready to sip on a drink for this evening. Before we begin tonight, you'll need to pick up the supplies and materials, the paints, etc. All those are listed in the description below. And you also need to print out the template or the pattern that we will be using this evening to make our painting. So go ahead and take the time to do that now. And I'd like to say at any time during this video, if you get lost or you get a little bit behind, or I get ahead of you, whatever the case might be, and you feel like you need to rewatch something, one of the techniques I'm explaining, feel free at any time to pause it, rewind it, and watch it again until you feel comfortable and you realize what you need to do in order to complete the next step. Now, there will be times when I will suggest that you actually do pause the video because we gotta wait for paint to dry. Every artist spends a lot of time waiting for paint to dry. And so you are not going to be the exception. You are going to wait for paint to dry along with me. But while we are waiting for that paint to dry, I'm going to share some of the photos that you guys sent me from the last paint night where we did a Joshua tree painting. So let's get ready. Take a sip of your drink. That's really good. And let's get started. Once you have your template downloaded and printed out, we need to trace it on the back. So I have this little lighted tablet. I bought this at Walmart. I think it was $15 or $20 in the toy section. If you go to an art store and buy something like this, they'll charge you something like $100. So this is a little art hack if you want to give it a try, if you want to find one of these. But you can also put it on a window as long as it's daylight time outside, and then trace on the back of it. So what you want to do is turn that template over. Now we can see through it. Is you just, wherever there's black lines, you go ahead and you trace it and just rub over it with the pencil. Because what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this to the canvas and trace it onto, it's kind of like using carbon paper if you've ever used that. I actually use carbon paper a lot, but I don't always use it. And sometimes this works really well as well. Chances are you don't have carbon paper. So go ahead and use this technique for putting pencil on the back of the lines. And you don't have to be perfect with this because all you're trying to do is just getting the pencil line so you can then trace it onto your canvas. So you don't have to be actually precise with this. You can see I'm just kind of doing this really fast. You just want to get enough on the pencil on the back of it because you're just going to have a little indication and use this as a pattern. It kind of helps you with your composition. It's not an exact thing that we're going to be doing. You'll use it as a guide. So don't stress out and trying to make this perfect. There we go. Almost done. Okay. All right. That is it. Now we will move on to transferring it onto the canvas. The next step is to prepare our canvas. And we're going to do that by, first of all, taking masking tape and putting it right along the edge, lining it up. This is going to create a nice little border and frame. So you can actually have it, it's almost looks like a frame when you're done with it. So we're going to mask off the white border with masking tape. Make sure you run your finger along the edge a few times so the paint won't bleed as easily as we're working on it. Now, if you're working on a table, you could actually tape this down to the table so your canvas doesn't move. If you're working on an easel, of course you don't have to do that, but you don't need to work on an easel. I will be moving this to an easel of my own as I do the instruction on it, just because it's easier for you to see. And this is going to be all it takes. One more running along the edge with your finger to make sure it's down securely. All right, now you take your template, which you have it traced on the back side with pencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just one little piece of tape here to make sure this stays in place. We're going to remove it when we're done. The next thing you want to do is just lightly push on your canvas wherever there's a line. Now this might not go all the way to the edges, but that's okay. We're gonna, it's not 8.5 by 11 doesn't quite match the 11 by 14 with the little border here, and that's okay. We'll make up for that. We'll go right along the edge. There are palm trees here. And you really just need to do the one line. And if you want to see how that works, we just see how it's going right like that. Just make sure you get all of the lines traced. If you miss one or two, it's okay. You can make up for it later. But you can check it as you go. Just lift your paper up, see where it's at. Don't press down too hard. You can put a book underneath this if you want to, just so it doesn't, you don't want to puncture your canvas by going too hard. And these little dots are going to be birds, but it's just a little indicator. I'll show you how to do those with a paintbrush later on, so don't worry about having any of this stuff looking perfect right now. Okay, so for me, I'm going to say that is good enough. Now you want to take your Sharpie and trace over these lines. So you can go extend these lines like the palm tree. And the reason we're doing this is we will paint over some of these lines and you will be able to see through it. If it's pencil, you might not be able to. You probably won't be able to. And it will also smear, and so you'll lose your line. By using a Sharpie, you can go ahead and feel secure that this isn't going anywhere from your painting. So if you just want to check it every once in a while, make sure you've got it going the right area. So I just made those go like that. Again, these palm branches don't have to be perfect. They kind of look like fireworks. They'll kind of mush into each other later on, so the actual line isn't that as important, but it'll be as a guide for you. Okay, this is a little mountain area of the island or the coastland, whatever you want it to be. This is the shoreline here. And this is going to be a line for the sandy coast right next to us in the foreground. And right now we're just going to draw some lines here. That is going to be our palm branches on one that's a larger palm that's right in front of us. Actually, I'm going to make those go down a little bit more. And you can do the same. And then just a couple little dots here where our little seagulls are going to go. I just make them as little V's. And that is it. We are now ready to apply paint to the canvas. So get your paint supplies out, and I'm going to transfer this over to my easel, and we will get ready to put some paint on the canvas. All right, we're just about ready to put the paint on the canvas. If you're a little nervous, just relax. I am not your grade school, high school, or college art instructor. I'm just here to help you make a fun painting for the evening. So just relax. We'll get some paint on the canvas and you'll get all the jitters out. All right, first thing we're going to do is we are going to paint the sky. So you're going to need your thicker brush, your 1.5 inch brush, and a little bit of blue paint and a little bit of white paint. Now, you might notice that somehow my painting grew in size from 11 by 14. Well, I realized as I was getting ready to paint this that it looked too small on camera, and it was a little small last time that I did it, so I made it a little bit bigger. So get some blue paint just on the tip of your brush, and you're going to paint straight over those lines that you made. Right over on top of the masking tape that you used. You know what? I didn't put enough paint to begin with because I have a bigger canvas than I did last time. So I'm going to add a little bit more paint. Super easy. All right, look at that. I put about another tablespoon of paint. Don't put too much, just what you need. So you'll go across the canvas, nice, even, broad strokes. And mine will look a little bit different since I'm doing a little bit larger. But that's okay. You guys can adjust. Paint right over those lines. You can still see them, but they're just indications what we're going to paint later to give us a guide where we're going to put our palm leaves or palm trees and everything else. So just go ahead. Keep painting. You know what? I might need even more paint. I think I really misjudged this one. I thought I would need less paint than I did. So I'm gonna refill one more time. So I'll have to remember that as we go along tonight. Hopefully this will be the last time I refill the blue for this. You don't need a really thick coat, just enough to make it a light blue. You'll see a few paint strokes. That's okay. Doesn't have to be solid blue. Makes it a little bit look more like sky. Gives a little bit more character. Looks like a painting. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring it right to the edge of the land area here. This could be the island, or it could be part of the coastline. Whatever you choose it to be, whatever you want it to be. So we're going to bring this right down to the line of the ocean, and if you go over that line a little bit, that's okay, because we're going to repaint. We're going to paint the ocean with another color on top of that, and that's okay. So if you look at the sky, it's usually a little bit darker as you go up, and it's a little bit lighter at the horizon. So I want you to dab into your white paint, put a little bit on there, and I want you to blend it in. Keep working it up, work it up, work it up. Keep it nice and wet. And so you'll have a nice gradient of your sky. So it goes from a dark blue to light blue. Now you might lose a little bit of the island or the coastline, which I just did when you do this, but you can kind of see it where it's at. You can always look at your pattern itself and redo it. The white is not as forgiving as the blue is for seeing through, but many times as the paint begins to dry, it takes on a certain transparency and darkness, so you actually can see through it anyway. So you're going to be able to see through that a little bit more. Okay, we brought that right to the horizon line. So what I want you to do is dip your brush in your paint. Not brush in your paint. I want you to dip your paintbrush into your water cup. And rinse it out a little bit. You don't have to get all of the paint out. I just want some of the white out. So now you're going to use your blue paint. We're going to paint the ocean water. So I've added a little bit more blue again. And we're going to add a little bit of green to that. And you say, how much green? Just a little bit. We want it to definitely have a different feel and color than the sky. And ocean water is sort of more of a blue-green color than the sky. So we're just adding a little bit of green to it. And we're going to get the feel for it right here. Something about like that will be good. And if you have a little bit of blue and a little bit of green, that's okay. Now when you get right up to this line, I want you to be very, very careful with it. Try to make it as straight as you can, because the horizon line of water in the ocean is always going to be straight. So try to go real straight with that. When you get to the shoreline here, I put a few juts in the land so it goes in a little bit. So you don't have to be quite as careful with that. You go right across the palm trees here. That's okay. There we go. Reload the paintbrush a little bit. And you want to go right up to this line. This is going to be the sand color here of the actual beach. It's kind of more of a lookout, not a cliff, but sort of like a little berm of sand. All right. Pretty simple, isn't it? It's not bad. It's better than you thought it was, huh? Go right up to your tape line. I'll give you a nice border. All right, now just kind of smooth this out. And we're going to be adding some water wave lines and little markings on the water. So there's a little bit of bluish green, a little bit of blue. That's okay. You can see I have a little bit more blue down here, down towards the bottom. I'll bring it more to the edge here. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to allow the water to dry, and we're going to allow the paint on the sky to dry. But we can still paint this sand color here without letting the rest of it dry. So again, dip your paintbrush in your water. And you want to get this one a little bit cleaner this time because we're going to switch over to the brown and add a little bit of white to that. So you're going to have the sand color. Okay, I'm going to need to get a little bit more out of this. Sometimes if you take your paintbrush with your paper towel and you just get it out. There you go. I think I'm going to need more paper towel in just a minute here, but I got enough of it out. So now you want to add a little bit of brown to your palette. So you want to add the white, a little bit of brown. You can make it whatever color you want the sand to be. And if you get a little bit of blue still mixed in with it, that's okay. Just makes the sand a little bit darker color, not quite as vibrant, and sand really isn't that vibrant anyway. All right, so you just want to bring that right up to the edge, the water there. You see how we paint right over that line? You don't even see it. Even though we did it with Sharpie, covers right up. And I can see a little bit of blue when I touch it, but that's okay. You just keep working it, smooth it over, and you won't even notice it. There we go. And just cover that area over. Okay, now word of warning, this is paint and sip night, so make sure you got your drink, you're going to sip it. You do not drink it, take a sip of your paint water. And the other thing that you do not want to do, you do not want to accidentally put your paintbrush in your drink. Now, I have heard people have done that. Not myself, of course, but other people, So just giving you a word of warning. Make sure you know where your paintbrush is, okay? So we're going to allow this paint to dry right now. So this is a time to allow paint to dry. And I'm going to show you a few photos of the paint night from last time. All right, the paint looks like it's pretty much dry to the touch. It's been maybe 5 minutes or so. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put some texture onto the sand. So remember that toothbrush I told you to get? Okay, this is the one I use for brushing my teeth. I think I said that last time. It's pretty yucky. I use it a lot for painting. What you want to do is just dip it into your water cup. Not your sipping cup for your beverage for drinking. And you want to put a little bit of this onto the toothbrush. And now you're going to flick it a little bit at a time on top of here. And if you get a little bit on the ocean part, that's okay, because we're going to be putting little ocean waves and watermarks and stuff on it. So just go ahead, put enough on there so you kind of want an even coating, not splotches, but you want it to look a little irregular so it looks natural. So you can kind of do it at different angles. You'll get the feel of it. So you want a good coverage on it. Just a little bit. You can put a little bit more down in the corners. So when you do a painting, it helps to have the edges a little bit darker, like in the corners, sort of a vignette. Just makes it look framed a little bit better. And you can put as much as you want on here, or as little. Okay, I think that's good. We just need a little bit. All right, now take your brown brush, dip it in a little bit of water, get it nice and wet, brush it off a little bit. Okay, now you kind of primed it. So we're going to paint this coastline. You see how after the paint dried, you could then see the markings of the Sharpie through it? I told you it was going to do that, didn't I? Oh, by the way, if you saw me last time, I was wearing a Bob Ross shirt. This is a different Bob Ross shirt. So I've got a couple of them, but I wanted to wear that for paint night tonight again. So this is my other Bob Ross shirt, just to let you know. And now if you were painting with me last time, you know my little studio here. You know the story about the curtains. But I know that you want to know what these curtains are. What is with it? What is with it? Well, I'm a Batman fan, if you didn't know it. So I'm going to tell you the story again. But for those of you who have not heard it, my studio here in my house used to be my son's bedroom. And of course, since I'm a big Batman fan, that means your son would be a big Batman fan too. So when he was little, we had a Batman theme in his room. And so he had Batman curtains. And he kept him up really through high school and through when he left here a few years ago after he got married. He just liked the curtains. He kept them up. And so when I moved in here with my studio after he left home, I decided I'm going to keep them. I took everything else out of the studio, out of his bedroom, which used to be his bedroom. I took everything out, but I left the curtains, put them back up, and so they're here to stay. I like them. And that is the story of my curtains in the background here. All right, so you can see what I'm doing here with the shoreline. And I'm going to check my second camera here to make sure it's focused okay. And it is. And it is just fine. So with this brown, you want brown and white, and you want it a little bit darker than what the sand was, because it's actually not sand, it's going to be like earth color, dirt color, like if you went around like towards the beach and it was what the hills are made of. It's sort of sand, but it's a little bit darker than what's actually on the beach. So you don't want it too dark, but just a little bit more than what was on the sand. All right, so you can even use a little bit of different shades in it. It doesn't have to be a solid. You could have a little bit darker brown here and there, a little bit lighter, kind of like what I'm doing. All right, there we want to be careful now when you get to the edge. I wasn't too careful, but you want to give it a nice edge along the shoreline there. But this can be, you don't really want to scrub it. You don't want it perfectly straight, because I think the coastline is not perfectly straight. You have a few juts here and there, little indentations, kind of like little channels that go in. Okay. Bring that right to the edge there. And we're going to let this paint dry as well, because we're going to be putting some We're going to be putting some trees, and we're going to make them look like they're in the distance. That will be on top of the dirt color. But you can see I have some variation of the brown. It doesn't have to be all perfect, and that's fine. Now, along the edge, and what you do, I want you to paint it a little bit darker. Just a little. Because that'll be kind of like the shadow along the shoreline. And yeah, the paint's still wet, so it doesn't have, you take the regular brown, straight brown, and just go along the edge. Doesn't have to be perfect, just so it's a little darker than that on top. Okay. All right, so we're gonna let that dry. We're gonna let that paint dry now, because the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do the palm trees over here. And really, so this doesn't smear, we need to let that paint to dry. So, take a sip. I actually already refilled mine because I was running out. And we are going to wait for some more paint to dry. And I'll show a few more pictures from last time. See you in a minute. All right, it is time to paint the palm trees. So we're going to use straight brown, and we're going to just paint the trunks to begin with. So we're going to do the one over here on the left. Now this will start right here, go up to the line, and bring it right off the edge onto the tape. That's all you do for number one. Palm tree number 2 is right here. That goes off the edge. You might not be able to see the line quite perfectly, but you can make it up. You can put the palm trees where you want to put the palm trees. You can move that just a little bit if you want to. It's your painting, it's not mine. I'm just here to guide you a little bit. All right, 2 palm trees left. Got this one that starts up here and leans a little bit. Go right on top of the water, the coastline hill there. And they should be a little bit curved. It's not perfectly straight. If you got a few lumps, that's okay. Palm trees aren't perfectly straight. Just let the paintbrush glide. All right, and it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to put some shading and highlights onto it also. So here we go. Getting this last palm tree on there. If you go outside the lines a little bit, it's okay. I think I just did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. It's okay. I'll keep saying that. It's okay. There are no mistakes. Just happy accidents. And you know why we're painting more than one tree? Because every tree needs a friend. So this first tree that we painted, whichever one it might have been, you got 3 other friends here with them. So we got trees with lots of friends. All right. There we go. All right, now rinse out your brush. You can hear me rinsing it out in my water cup. Not my sipping cup, but my water cup. My sipping cup is just about gone. All right, so now we're going to put the foliage, the greenery, onto our little land formation there. And you're going to be mixing, again, green with blue. Because if you look in the distance, when you look at trees or bushes or an island or something, you're looking through some water vapor, some mist, and it usually is a little bit lighter in color. So the further that you go away from something, the more like white that it appears. It's a lighter color. As things come into the foreground, they get darker, they get sharper, they get crisper and more vibrant. So if you look at the mountains, they're misty mountains. There's a reason for that, because you're looking through some water vapor by the time you see it, because it's miles away. So we got some water vapor off of the ocean. So we're gonna paint some little bushes or trees on here. And you just kind of dab it, not quite like polka dots, but just a little bit. I think I need a little bit more green, and I'm gonna add a little bit of white to it now. About like that. And that might have been a little bit too much white, so I'm going to add a little bit more green back into it. It doesn't have to be, there's no really perfect color for it, just whatever you think looks good. And again, you can break it up a little bit. So you don't want to do it solid. You want to see some of the land going through there. You'll see kind of the edges, kind of just dab it a little bit so you see the trees. But you also want to see some land through there. It looks a little bit more natural. You just don't want it just a solid green. So you just kind of dab it, tap it, do it a little bit random like. And leave a few gaps where the sand is. And maybe there's imagine there's like a runoff. So there's going to be like an area, maybe a couple of them next to each other, where you let it go so there's actually a space in between where water might run down. There's actually, trees don't grow there because it's kind of like a little bit of a cliff. This might take a little bit to do. That's okay. You got the whole night. Yeah, keep adding a little bit. And if you vary the color a little bit with a little bit of more blue in it and a little bit more green here and there, it looks a little bit natural. Again, you're going to have some gullies going through here, maybe a little few cliffs. And we're going to put a few highlights on here as well, so after this dries, we'll put a little bit on there. So just keep dabbing it. This is part of the detail work. The extra detail really makes your painting look nice when it's done. So I've had a lot of people ask me, how long have I been painting? How long have I been drawing? How long have I been an artist? So I honestly can say pretty much my whole life. My earliest memory was when I was 2 years old. I had a little, like a pocket notebook that I was drawing with, and I remember this. I was drawing a picture of Frankenstein at our coffee table in our living room, and my mom, my mom came up to me and said, okay, because I know how old I was because she asked if I wanted to have my diaper changed. I still remember that. So I was potty trained at about age 2. So I vividly remember saying, just a minute, because I wasn't done painting or drawing Frankenstein. I had a pencil that I was drawing him with in this little notebook. So I can pretty much say I've been drawing my whole life. Painting, I'd say, I've done some painting off and on when I was in high school. I didn't do it as much. I'd say I probably really started painting a lot more in the last probably 10 years or so. Most of it was more drawing and sometimes artwork with pencil, ink, watercolor. Not so much acrylic. First I really ever tried oil painting was probably about 10 years ago. It's a little difficult to do. I really like oil painting. Maybe I'll do a paint night on oil painting just like Bob Ross does. But it can be very frustrating for people if you haven't used oil before. It's much different than using acrylic. It does not dry as quickly as oil painting. I mean, we waited just a few minutes in order for this paint to dry, but when you get to with oil painting, if you don't put any drying agents in it, it could take actually weeks for it to be completely dry. So oil painting is a lot of fun. I enjoy it. It really allows you to do some better blending than you can do with acrylic. And it makes a tremendous difference in that regard. So I enjoy it. I think sometimes you can get more of a realistic look with oil painting just because of the blending. But acrylic I like because it's a super easy cleanup. Just water, soap and water, and it dries really quickly. You can do a lot of layered type painting, which I really enjoy doing. I do a lot of color on top of color, and glazing and scumbling. So if you want to lighten something, that's called scumbling, by applying a little bit of white paint, watered down on acrylic, to lighten a darker color. And if you want to glaze over something to either change the color or darken it, you use a light coating of black or a different color to glaze it and change the color. So I tend to like to really do a lot of glazing and scumbling when I paint. And you can do it with oil painting as well if you put dryers in it. It's a product called Liquin that you can use. And I tend to use a lot of Liquin when I paint with oil, just so it can dry fast. It kind of stinks, but I do like to use that. Okay, so I think for now we are good with that as far as our coastline. I'm gonna add a little bit more here and there. And that's okay. Okay, so actually I think by the time we are done with over this side, we can add a little bit of highlight already to this because this is pretty much dry. So you want to add a little bit of white. Now I'm going to tell you the direction of the sun is coming from this direction, so the light is going to be casted from this way. So things will be highlighted over on this side, the shadows will be on this side. So if you put just a little bit here and there, not a lot, you'll see how, you know how I said there's like gullies? A lot of the times that's how the trees grow. So you do a little bit here. We'll do a little bit on the top here. Just a little bit, not much, just a little. So it looks like maybe the trees have been illuminated a little bit. And now this, where you put the gullies, just a little bit along the edge. Just tap it. It's not nearly as much paint as the bigger strokes that you were using. So just a little bit along the edge here. Now the neat thing, when you're working on this, when you're close up to it, doesn't look like you've really done much. It just kind of looks like paint splotches on top of this. But if you back up and you look at it, you start to kind of see that, like, oh, it actually does look like trees on a land formation from a distance across the water with a few highlights on it. And the trick is just to add a few highlights. You don't want to go too light with it. I was getting a little too light. So I'm going to just add a little bit more green to it. Just imagine there's clumps of trees here and there that stick out above the other ones. The other ones are in the shadows, and a few of these, maybe right by the water, they stick out a little bit more because they're a little bit lower. It's a little tricky, but you got plenty of opportunities to try and make this look okay. So you have a lot of detail here. Again, I'll put a few more down by the shoreline here. And just a couple in between the tree here. A few here. A bit there. You break it up, just adds a little bit of texture. Sometimes when you're working on your painting, you just step back from it a little bit, look at it from a distance, and you can see, oh, hey, this needs a little bit there, needs a little bit there. I do that a lot. I kind of step back and go, wow, I didn't realize by looking at it up close it looks so different as it is far away. So that's a little tip for you, to step back and look at things from a little bit further back. Okay, that's good enough for me right now. If you guys want to keep working on that part of it, that's just fine. I think we're going to do some of the water. So I want you to get out a little bit of get some of your black paint, add that to your palette. And we're going to put a little black with our blue and green. All right, so add a little bit of black. Add a little bit of black to the blue and green that you use for the watercolor. And you create a few bigger waves here. Well, a little bit more black to it. Should be able to see it. Just, little squiggles. They should be straight. I kind of have to eye it up here to make sure they're straight. Doing it at an angle sometimes is a little bit more difficult. But just not all straight across, kind of go stagger them a little bit. See how you do that? Just a little wiggles. You do that close to the sand, because as we get further back, the lines are going to be a little bit thinner, and we're going to switch brushes. So these up close are going to be a little thicker. And we'll go about maybe a third of the way up on the ocean here. All right, so now we're about a third of the way up. I want you to switch to your liner brush or the rigger brush. And now, again, you'll be doing some wiggles. You might want to water the paint down a little bit, adding some water to it, just so it's a little thinner. Sometimes it's easier to make the wiggles with the liner brush when the paint is a little bit thinner. So it's just kind of, you do different lengths, some long ones, some short ones. And again, since my canvas is a little bit bigger, I tend to have to make a few more lines, so it kind of helps you get a chance to watch me do them. All right, those are a little bit thick there, but that's okay. So we'll complete them here on the in between the palm trees here first. Start from we're working our way up from the bottom, and we're going up to the top. And they will get skinnier and skinnier as we work our way up to the top. You won't see them as much. I'm going to need to add a little bit of water to thin this down. And your paint, my paints are starting to run into each other. And that's okay, because I keep tilting it so you guys can see it. Keep wiggling that paintbrush as you go over. That one wasn't too good, but that's okay. I'll cover it up. So once we get up close to the top here, there'll be fewer and fewer, skinnier and skinnier. And once you thin this down, the lines will be a little transparent once they dry. Now I'm just gonna use a few of these, just kind of doing it when my brush is almost dry. But you can take your time with this. Now what you want to do, once you've rinsed out your brush, is you take the blue-green color that's your ocean color, add a little bit of white to it, thin it down. And now you're going to add a few wiggles of the white, interspersing it. Some of them will go on top of the black, some will go on top of just the blue. But you want to make a few squiggles here. And they'll be a little bit thicker again when they're closer to you. A few more of them. A few shorter, a few longer. Sometimes when you're doing this, like I did last time, you kind of run out of things to say. Is make another squiggled line, make another squiggled line. And when you got all these little waves and watermarks, you got a lot. So we just keep on plugging away. So maybe this is time for another story. One of Myron's art stories from the past. So I was telling you, one of my earliest memories was drawing. So I kind of had a knack for it. When I was in grade school, kind of like if there was a drawing project or somebody needed to draw something, I was usually the student elected to do it. Now, when I was in kindergarten, I liked to draw back then, and so one of the first days of school, we had an assignment for a book cover or something that we were doing. I don't remember what it was. So something we did every day. And then we had a booklet when we were done and bring it home and show our parents how great it was. Well, the first assignment was for the cover. And I'll admit, I didn't actually hear what we were supposed to be drawing. And, as a kindergartner, you're afraid you're going to get in trouble if you ask a question sometimes and you don't really know what to do because school's all new and everything. It was the first couple days of school. So I was kind of afraid to ask what I was supposed to be doing. I saw other kids, they were coloring and drawing something. I thought, I guess we get to draw everything we want. So I decided to draw a cat using crayons. It's a black cat. And back then, kindergartner, I actually didn't know how many legs a cat had. So I drew a six-legged cat. Now, I was kind of proud of it because it looked like a cat. You could tell it was a cat. I don't think I have it anymore. Because my mom saved a lot of my stuff and gave it to me when she I got it from her house when she passed away. But the funny thing is, it was the assignment was actually draw a picture of your teacher. So all the kids had this picture of what they thought the teacher looked like, and mine was a six-legged cat. So my brothers gave me a hard time on that, saying what was because it said I couldn't read what it said. It was my teacher on the bottom, and on my picture of it was a six-legged cat. So I do now know that cats have four legs, and it was a black cat that I drew, and I do have a black cat now. He's got four legs, not six. So there's a little story for you to break up your time when you're painting all these little white lines for your watermarks. I hope that passed your time a little bit quicker. And I have a few more to paint here now that I was actually telling my story and looking at the camera. So I actually kind of fell behind a little bit maybe. So, all right, we got a few more of these to do. And I'm gonna try to pick up my pace a little bit here. You go at your own pace, but I'm gonna water this down a bit, and I'm gonna speed it up with a few more lines here, a few lines there, and in a little while we won't see all these as we get closer to the horizon line. So, but you can see how it starts to. It's my little trick for painting water. You start with a solid color for the water that's a little you know, ocean color, lake color, whatever. And then you go ahead and put some dark lines on top of that. And then you go ahead and put a few highlights. Now, right towards the bottom of it, I want you to lighten it up a little bit more and just add a few more white ones. Because you might be able to see a few of those as actual waves. Just a few, not many, just a few highlights. See how it just kind of brings things up a bit. Okay, I think that's enough of them. Just a few. Just a few. There we go. Okay. And you can add a few more if you want to spend some more time on the ocean, but you'll see more of the water waves as you're closer. As they get far away, you don't really see them. So, the next thing we're going to do is rinse out that brush, your liner brush. Use your round brush again. Rinse that out again. And you're going to use your black and brown. My paint's drying out a little bit, so I'm adding a little bit of water to it. Now, remember I said the light is coming from this direction. So that means the shadow is going to be on the left side of the tree. So on the left side of the tree, go ahead and put a dark line. Add a lot of black to the brown. And we'll do the same thing with each tree. Just going down the side, not the whole tree, just the left side of it, maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, now this is decision time, which tree that you want in front. Now, I'm going to put this tree in front, so I'm going to stop the shadow right when I get to this one, and then I'm going to start it here. I'm going to cross over, and now I have established this tree being in front. And this tree will be behind. So you start at about there. Bring it right down to the bottom. Kind of imagine where that tree is going to be. Okay, now, so you've got the left side being the shadow. So what you want to do is put a little bit of brown and a little bit of white together. So it's going to be dark, it's going to be lighter than the rest of the tree. So on the right side of the tree, you want to do another okay, that was a little too white. So I'm going to darken that a bit. I'll come back to that one. So on the right side of the tree, just want to slide it down the edge like that. Now this one is your front tree. So that's the tree in front. I'm putting the highlight all the way on it. Now the one that's right behind there, you want to stop when you get to the shadow. And then start it up again here. Like I said, mine's a little bit, I think, too white. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put some water on my brush real quick here. And I'm going to kind of blend it a little bit. Just a little bit. While it's still wet, you can do a little bit of blending. That's another art trick. The paint's still wet with acrylic, you can blend it a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now we're going to put a few lines with black and brown. It's a little bit darker. And we're just going to put a few lines, like, you know, palm trees have some lines going through them. So sort of like half circles right through it. So if you do it a circle, it gives it a round shape. So you can see that they're actually round. You see how that gives it depth? So you have the highlight and the shadow. And as you paint this round, just a little bit gives it the indication that you have a round tree. You've got highlights on one side, shadows on the other. All right. Again, this is with the liner brush, if you didn't see me pick that one up. You see this technique actually to make them as birch trees as well. You see Bob Ross uses this technique. Only he uses his palette knife a lot of the times to do these. Yeah, I don't use palette knives very often. I like to use brushes. Okay, so there we go. You can put as many lines on there as you want. All right. All right, we're looking pretty good here. We're getting almost done. We have some palm branches to do. So let's start with this tree. So just come up from the top. Trace over, well, you can see the ones that you made. Trace over those lines. And we're going to put, these are just the start of the branches here. We're going to put some actual palm fronds. We're going to turn them into that. But our guide for how those are going to be is with a straight green line. So we can kind of see where to go with those. All right, bravery test here. See, if you make a curvy line, you got to whistle. So see how that does that? It really helps to make a curvy line if you whistle with it. So here, try it. And if you have the note go up, it means you're going up. If you're going down, see how easy that is? Try it. All of you will be whistling now whenever you do a line. I'm not going to do it on each one, but I think it's kind of fun. So now if you're kids, if you do it all the time, walk after this video, I'm sure your parents will just really appreciate that. Okay, now remember, if one's behind or in front, you don't want to cross it over. You want to make sure you don't do that. That one's behind. All right. Now, the ones that are over on this side, over on your right side, this is one that is actually would be closer to you. Had to do it. All right. So now, just go ahead and bring those down. So we're just pretending that the palm tree is actually over here. But it gives the illusion, you don't have to paint the whole thing to actually pretend that it's there. And it gives a nice little frame by having the palm branches, just the palm branches over on the side. We know there's a big palm tree here. We don't actually have to paint the whole thing. We can just let whoever's looking at our painting imagine that the whole thing is there. And I'm going to bring mine down a little bit lower just because I feel like it. And you can too if you want, but you don't have to. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more green to my palette because I'm running out. All right, now here's the tricky part. We're going to be painting the palm fronds. If you add a little bit of brown to your green, Kind of looks a little bit more natural as we do the fronds now. So you go like that. And it's a little bit hard to see the blue on the green. But we're going to add a little bit of black to it as well, because we're going to do some shadows and highlights with all of the little palm fronds, just like we did with the trunks of the trees. Hoping this picks up well on the camera. Sometimes you can't see it as well. But all of these little branches will need some palm fronds. But they kind of cross over. They get a little bit messy. So in order to see this a little bit better, I'm going to add some black to the green, which you're going to be doing anyway. So go ahead and add some black to it. But we're going to make our palm fronds. This will be our shadow portions of it. So you want to see, where you have all the branches. So it's a dark green color. Add a little bit more black to your green if you want to, so it's a little bit darker. And over here we'll have them a little darker because these are kind of in the shadows. All right. The palm fronds kind of keep the angle going, which the direction of where the arch goes. And I think I said earlier, they're going to start overlapping here and there. So if you miss a few of them go in one direction, that's okay. They'll all start to kind of mush together, and that's just fine. There's a lot going on with these palm branches here. All right, so we'll do the same thing over on this side. We do the branches. Actually, we're going to make these a little bit darker. Because remember how I said things that in the foreground are a little bit darker? So these we're going to have a little darker to begin with. Just we'll do the other side, a few of these. Add a little bit of water, that'll help to thin it so it keeps moving. Do each side. It's just a little curve from the indicator line. It's kind of fun. You just do lots of these little strokes, and we're going to put some highlights on here too, so they're going to look even more real. One more branch here to go. Add a little bit more water. All right, so we continue with a few more dark green palm fronds. Put a few more on here. We are almost done. Keep that paint watered down. Really helps to have it thin. Keep going with a few more strokes. Wow, it's really tacking up a bit. But here we go. Okay. Look at this side. I'm going to put just a few more over here. A few more. You see the stroke that I'm using here is just you pull it down, you gradually bring it off so it comes to like a little bit of a point. All right, now I'm going to put a few highlights on here. So you want to do a little bit of green, a little bit of white. Maybe about like that. And remember, the light's coming from this way, so we just put a few highlights in here on this side. Maybe up here. But just a few. You don't want a lot. You just want enough to highlight to show that there's a little bit of light hitting it. Just illuminates a little bit. Have a little bit of light. It helps. So the darkness shows underneath it. You just put a little bit. And put a few more here. A few more there. Put a few up on that side. There. A couple there. We don't need too many. Maybe put one there, coming down there a little bit. That should be good. And we need to do a few more over on this side. Let's say now it's over on this side, so we'll have a few showing some light there. And a little bit here. And if it pokes through a little bit, there's going to be some shadow that you can't really see because they're all clumped together. So we'll put a few here. Make that one a little bit longer there. And we'll just have a few come out there. All right. Well, I think we are about done here. So, you know what you need to do when you finish a painting That's going to be sign your name, and you can do it in any color that you want to. Just give it a little bit of contrast. I'm going to do kind of a darkish brown green. And I'm going to put my name down here. And we're just going to put it right here. I got Myron. M-Y-R-O and N. All right. So that's pretty much that. We are done with the painting. Now the fun part, I think this is the most fun part of the whole night, is we get to take off the tape on the outside. So let me find the edges here. We're going to do that all together. This is so slick. You got an instant frame, and it is ready to hang on your wall. Let's get these little remnants off here. There you go. A little bit still on the corner. Oh, come on. Not being cooperative. Last little bit. Here we go. There we go. You know what? I forgot to do the birds. Okay, we got to do the birds. Get your liner out. Get your liner out. Put a little bit of white paint on your brush. And what you put little V's. That's our finishing touch here. Little V's. And we'll put one right there. So we got 4 birds. Maybe we'll put 5. Right there. Okay, now we are officially done. We've got the birds on there. We got all the highlights done, signed our names. Okay, I've had a good night. I hope your pictures turned out great. I would love to see what they look like. Again, you can send me an email, mmilky@centralchristian.org. You can also tag us on Instagram at CCC Lancaster. Put us up on Facebook. I've got some things on the screen here where you can all the contacts. So hope you had a good night, and I will see you next time. Take care.